back to Paw Patrol with your host, Dr. Jeff Dikis. Tonight, I'm joined by Dr. Savannah Santiago. Thanks for hopping on with me tonight.
Hi, I'm so excited to be back.
For those who don't recall or haven't heard that episode, you are a first-year resident at St. Vincent, Ascension, St. Vincent, Indianapolis with Dr. Dahir. How are things going?
Oh, they're good. I mean, first year has really kicked it into swing. It's incredible to believe that I'm almost to my second year of residency. It feels like I just started, and it also feels like I've been doing this for forever. So it's been going really well, having a really great week. Just got off call last week. I'm so feeling grateful that things have slowed down just a little bit.
I remember those days when you hand off. I don't know. You guys still use a pager?
I'm so bummed we don't use a pager, and I was so ready to bedazzle my pager, but it actually goes directly to my cell phone. But it is the pager noise. So when I listen to or if I watch Gilmore Girls, they have actual pagers. The pager noise is a little traumatizing for me.
Yeah, I remember those days. We had a literal call pager, like, here you go, that's yours now. Good luck. And I remember that just feeling like the relief that comes with handing off call, physically like handing them the pager, saying like, here you go, it's yours now. Whatever, if it rings, it's not my problem, it's your problem now. So yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense that we live in 2025 and things go to your cell phone. But yeah, I bet if I heard that sound to this day, it would just induce some panic, because it's always just like, now what? Work. It means work. I've got work to do.
It is the worst. I will say for me, it's turning my direct messenger for the hospital to say that I'm unavailable. That is like when I finally give like no one's going to message me anymore. I can turn my phone back on silent. It's a good place to be.
Yeah. So I had kind of an interesting day today. I was in the OR. I did a revisional midfoot fusion, and then I did another revisional midfoot fusion. So 2 train wreck nightmares back to back.
Light work.
And why I put them on the same day, I could not figure that out, because clinic Jeff was like, oh yeah, that'll be, yeah, no problem. We'll tag you on. We'll do that. And then OR Jeff was like, what's going on? Why did I do this to myself? Because then I got an add-on ankle fracture. And then I got called with an interesting case that I thought would be interesting for you and I to go through. It was a pediatric injury. So let me pop that up and we can look at the x-rays together.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I'm a big peds girl.
I literally just worked on this a few hours ago.
Well, you might not know this about me, but I actually also run the Instagram for the American College of Foot and Ankle Pediatrics.
There you go.
And I went to their conference this past September, I believe, in Joshua Tree, and it was wonderful. So I'm excited to see this case.
That's super cool. And you said, you were telling me off air that you did something interesting today with your day. Why don't you tell people what you did with your day real quick?
So I had a late start today, so I didn't have my first case until 10 a.m. So I had the OR this morning. It was hammer toe. And then I went over to our main hospital, and I was actually in our orthopediatric clinic, which was a really unique opportunity. And I got to spend the day doing all things orthopedics, but it was their toe and foot day. So I got to see lots of curly toes, some club foot, in-toeing, toe walking. It was a really, really great day. And I was very grateful that a very kind pediatric orthopedic surgeon here at Ascension invited me to his clinic, and that I got the opportunity to start working with him. So I think this is a really cool thing that we're going to be starting up at Ascension, hopefully. And I definitely highly recommend it. Dr. Dahir is a wealth of peds knowledge, so I will be getting to see all the kiddo feet.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like a fantastic experience. I think sometimes people come out of residency not seeing that many pediatric cases, especially if you're at a VA, right? You're going to be limited in the type of patient
100%.
that you're seeing. But even other residency programs are somewhat limited sometimes in pediatrics. Like, we didn't see all that many peds in Pittsburgh. You'd see some, but not a whole lot, because they had a children's hospital, and we did orthopedics, but we didn't go to the children's hospital. So that sounds like a fantastic experience for you.
It was really great. I mean, for residency numbers, you're only required to see 25 podopeds. And if I just log what I saw in 3/4 of a clinic day today, I'm well over that. So it was definitely a great day.
You got that 3-year requirement taken care of in a day. That's awesome. So this is an interesting case. It's a 13-year-old kid who was in gym class, kind of warming up, doing what he called high knees. Kind of, you can picture people doing high knees. See football players doing it, warming up before a game. And he came down wrong, and he twisted his foot. and he came to the ED and they called me,
Mhm.
and this was his x-ray. So super interesting talonavicular joint dislocation. So the
Mhm.
talar head is popping out laterally, and you can see like some abnormal subluxation. You can't really tell on the lateral what's happening, but certainly that talonavicular joint does not look
Mhm.
normal. But on the AP, you can see there's kind of an intra-articular fracture at the medial aspect of the talar head,
Yeah.
intra-articular, which is complicated for a 13-year-old with
Yeah.
dislocation there. So I've never seen this in a pediatric patient before. This was an interesting case that popped up for me today. What are your thoughts when you see an X-ray like that?
Well, my first thought is that I'm grateful I'm not on call. But after that, I mean, I would want to see whether or not it's reducible. Potentially would want to get some more advanced imaging like a CT.
Mhm.
Want to really look at all of those bones and joints and make sure it's doing all right.
Yeah, for sure. So that was my concern as well, because sometimes when you get this talonavicular joint dislocation, it's actually quite hard to reduce it
Mhm.
until they're fully muscularly relaxed, like in the
Yeah.
OR. And so we were doing this under conscious sedation with ketamine in the
Yeah.
ED. And so luckily I was able to get it popped back in and I got to
Mhm.
play the hero. So this is post reduction films
Looks
here.
really
That's
good.
my thumb holding on the lateral aspect of the talar neck to prevent
Mhm.
dislocation while we check the x-ray to make sure I was able to reduce it. And then eventually we'll get a CT scan and I'll
Yeah.
figure out operative intervention. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting case. And I was a little bit worried that I wasn't going to be able to get the reduction. Sometimes you pull on these, you pull on them, you pull on them, and they just don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But luckily, this one I pulled on it and kind of popped back in and felt pretty good about that. So that was my afternoon.
It seems like a pretty good afternoon after two big cases and a big add-on. Would you consider ordering an MRI at all for this, or do you think with just a CT you'd be okay?
I mean, I order CT primarily. So remember when we're in the ED, we're gonna get like quick testing
Mhm.
and CT scan certainly fills that realm of interarticular nature of the fracture. So, I
Mhm.
mean, if I down the road though, if I were to treat that non-operatively, I haven't seen a CT scan yet. I need to look at it. But if he has an interarticular fracture
Yeah.
and I don't end up treating it operatively, yeah, I mean, we're gonna watch that thing pretty closely.
Mhm.
Talus, navicular, in a 13-year-old, yeah, we're gonna watch that pretty closely. So I wanted to ask you if you
Mhm.
had to go back and do fourth year
Yeah.
all over again,
Oh.
what would you do differently than what you did do? Or do you feel like you kind of planned it out well enough that everything went according to plan?
Yeah. I think fourth year is a really interesting year. It's a lot of give and take. I mean, I think it's an amazing experience that I got to travel all over the United States, going to all these different amazing programs, meeting amazing people who I still talk to. And at the same time, it's super challenging. You're away from all of your loved ones. You're living in this strange place where you might not know anyone. You're traveling every single month. You're a student that makes no money, working these really long hours. So I think it's a give and a take. If I could go back in time, I think one thing I did that made my fourth year really challenging is I didn't line up my externships in a way that made geographic sense. So I was traveling like at least 500 miles every single month. And I did a lot of that by car.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm a big podcast person, so you just kind of get the miles in. So I think I potentially would have changed my externships a little bit to make more geographic sense. For me, my rule going into fourth year was that I was willing to go anywhere. I would go anywhere if it meant that I was going to get really good training with good people.
Mhm.
In my article that I wrote on kind of how I chose my externships and how I chose my residency interviews, I talked about this a lot, but I truly was willing to go to anywhere in the United States. And I was very lucky that I have a partner, my boyfriend, who's very supportive of that. My family was too.
Mhm.
And I ended up here in Indiana. But I think that's one thing I would have done differently. I think I also would have told myself to enjoy my externships a little bit more. You are going to these new places and you want to know what it's like to live there.
Yeah.
And I was so focused on studying for boards, getting research done, my residency application, that I think I didn't enjoy the process as much as I could have.
Yeah.
Um, but now that I'm starting to work with third year students, upcoming fourth year students who are just in their first month of externship or their second month of externship, it is a big change from just your regular third year rotations. And I think it's some things that every student should know is you should know how to set up an OR and you should know how to be helpful to the resident. So I was just talking to a student the other day and I told them like I have an acronym to remember like whether or not the OR is set up. So I wish I could go back to myself at the very beginning of fourth year and like shake her and be like, at the bare minimum, like just be helpful for the resident. Like, even if you're scared, even if you're nervous, make sure that you have local, there's a tourniquet, the table is set up, you write your name on the board, you write the resident's name on their board, save their glove size and their contact in your phone so you don't have to ask them every single case, like, hey, what's your glove size? And it's like this stressed out resident who's like, I don't care what my glove size is. Like, I'll just grab them myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell myself to chill out a little bit, but I would tell myself at the beginning, like, it's game time. This is everything you've been prepping for. And I think I would read more. I started the Landmark series in my column, and I think that that's really helpful. And when you
Mm-hmm.
show programs like, hey, I read the literature, or I read the literature close enough that I can like bring up these big articles, it just shows how well prepared you are.
I think that's great advice. I think it's hard though to know. It's almost like you don't know what to do until you go out on enough rotations and then
Yeah,
you figure out what to do. And then you wish you could go back to your first rotation and be like, no, I
exactly.
actually do know what to do, but I didn't know what to do until I figured out what to do.
Right.
So it's difficult, but yeah, I think that's good advice to kind of take it easy, not too easy, not slack off,
Exactly.
not care, but just it's also easier though to retrospectively look at it and
Yeah.
know that everything's going to work out and be
All
like,
worked out.
hey, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. But at the time, you're like, I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know where I'm going to go to residency. I want to get whatever program I want to. So I think that's good advice though,
Yeah.
because I work with third year students and some of them are extremely helpful and some of them are kind of aloof
Yeah.
or maybe
I call it
aloof
deer
isn't.
in the headlights.
Yeah, I
Like,
think that's probably it. Like,
they're very
where do I
smart and they're
stand?
very capable. They're just nervous and don't know what's going on.
Yeah, they don't want to touch the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes instead of not touching the wrong thing, they don't touch anything. And you're
Mhm.
like, come on, get some gloves on. Come on
Yeah.
over here. You can help move the patient. That's easy enough. So, I mean, it just comes with comfort level. I
Mhm.
think the more you do something, the easier it becomes.
I
But
agree.
yeah, that's good advice. So, what has your week this week looked like as a first year, kind of second half of first year
Yeah.
residency? What's your most recent? Maybe let's pick your call week. What's your week been like?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to talk about my call week. It might scare students away from podiatry.
They can handle it.
But yeah, so I was on call last week. So here at Ascension St. Vincent, we take call at our main hospital. So that's at our 86th hospital in Indianapolis. And then we also kind of cover the St. Vincent Carmel. I definitely help cover it. It's right down the street from my apartment. So my attendings know that I can just stop on my way to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So we take call at 86. You do 24/7 call for 7 days. So starting at Friday at 5 p.m. until Friday at 5 p.m. So I got off on Friday at not 5 p.m., but around 7 p.m. And I had this past weekend off, and then I'm just on service this week. So I've just been covering clinic and surgeries in
Mm-hmm.
ambulatory surgery centers. But last week, so if we go over to the weekend, I had a couple consult. It was mostly wound stuff. I will say I'm from San Diego, so I complain about the cold a lot here in Indiana. But
Yeah.
the really nice thing about the winter is we get a ton of ankle fractures.
Yeah.
And it's good learning. I feel very sad for the patient, but it's very good learning.
Uh-huh.
So I took call over the weekend. I don't remember getting any big traumas, but I did get a couple of consults in the ED, chronic wound kind of stuff, with a couple of like acute diabetic foot infections. I typically get to the hospital between 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning if I didn't have anything come in overnight. If I get a page overnight, or if a nurse or another physician is just really blowing up my phone overnight, I give myself the grace if I don't come in until 7 or 7:30 so I can get a little bit more sleep if my schedule can afford that.
Mm-hmm.
I had two cases on Monday. One was a TMA, the other was a different type of amputation. And then rounded on all of my patients. I take the students to get breakfast and lunch when they're with me. So I think I'm a really nice resident because I make sure they're fed. I, in
Mm.
turn, also make sure myself is fed.
Oh yeah. I don't miss
Very important.
meals. I do
Yeah.
not miss meals.
I don't do the whole suffering and not eating while on call. I make sure
Uh,
that I'm fed, my students fed. I also just tell my student what my general expectations are before they spend a week of call with me. So I had one student who was with me last week. He did a really phenomenal job. But I tell them ahead of time, like, hey, if I tell you to be there at 7 o'clock, please don't be late. If you are late, I'm not going to let you scrub surgery. My expectation is that the bucket of supplies is filled and that the buckets I have labeled in the office have the supplies that we need. I'll run the list with you in the morning when we go to get breakfast. Please take notes so I don't have to continually repeat myself about what patient we're talking about or what's going on with the patient. Make sure you have your bandage scissors. Make sure you have your cell phone on you, especially if we're rounding. I have lost students who don't have their phone, and then they're just, I'm never going to find them again. I have to keep going and they'll find me. Um, and I ask them to not text me before 6 a.m. or after 9 p.m. if it's not an emergency. If it is an emergency, great. And I tell every student that's with me, if you have something that's going on, if you get a flat tire, if you have a family emergency, something bad happens to you, just tell me. I do not need a student in order to do my call week. And so my expectation is that I can do my job and it's a bonus that I get to have you with me.
right.
But if you have something going on, just communicate it and I won't hold that against a student. If they have a true emergency, I think go for it, take care of it. But while I was on call, I mostly was just rounding every single day, seeing a couple of consults. I did have multiple add on cases. I had a couple traumas this past week. So I was in the OR pretty late. I think I had a X-fix. So I had an acute Charcot with an ankle fracture and fractured hardware on Tuesday. I
Mm,
know.
that's
And
tough.
then I had an ankle fracture on Wednesday
Mm,
that were both pretty late add on cases. And
mm,
then I also had multiple amputations, diabetic wound stuff. And then that was pretty much the week. Was I got there at 7, I rounded, I saw any extra consults. And then once I was done at our main hospital, I would head over to Carmel, see my consults there, see my patients there. And then I had add on cases at Carmel on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then I had cases at 86 in the morning, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
wow.
So it was a busy week.
Yeah, a lot going on there, which is good
Yeah.
because I would, it's been a long time now since graduated residency, but I remember thinking that this is my time to do as much as I can, to learn as much as I can, to see as many cases as I can, and you won't get that time back. And so
Yeah.
residency to me was two things. It was the most important part of the learning cycle. Yes, the school is important because you need the foundational knowledge to understand what's happening in residency, but really being able to apply that knowledge is the most important part of that. So it's the most important 3 years of learning that I think that you get,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to get that back. But you're also, I had a heck of a time. I had so
Yeah.
much fun. We hung out together. We had
Mm-hmm.
we loved our attendings. We had co-residents got along. We'd hang out. We had parties. We had birthday parties. We would
Yeah.
go out. I mean, it's just such a good time. So I love and I miss that collegial interaction between
Right.
attendings and all your co-residents and all that stuff. It's just such a fun time. Yes, you work hard, but not that hard. I mean, yes, it sounds, you just rattled off a lot of things,
But they were
which,
all things that got done. At the end of
right.
the day, they were all things that got done. And I will say, one of the wonderful things about my co-residents is everyone knew that I had a really hard week last week.
Mm-hmm,
And I unfortunately lost a patient on Friday, and it was hitting me harder than it usually hits me.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's good because it just means I still really care, which I think is so important that after a heavy, hard week, I can still care about my patient that much.
Yeah.
And one of my co-residents called me on Saturday and was like, hey, it's National Margarita Day. I'm going to come pick you up. Like, you need to spend time with living people your age with no wounds, not in a hospital. And a bunch of me and my co-residents got together and we just all hung out, and it was a no podiatry zone. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about residency is like, yes, I had a really hard call week, but everyone has a hard call week. And usually my benchmark is I like to do 10 surgeries in a week if I'm on call. And, I hit that and it was great. So it was lots of learning.
Yeah, good luck with the no podiatry zone because you last about 5 minutes before you start talking about a
Yeah.
patient or a
We
case or
still
a
talk
call.
about podiatry, but
Like, yeah, no, it just comes up. You just can't help it. So, um, Do you think that in your experience so far that residency has met your expectations, or how do you think that residency has been different than what you expected? And what I mean by that is
Yeah.
during fourth year, you get a little taste of each program, a little 1 month sampler
Yeah.
platter, and then you get to residency and it's kind of, it can't be the same because you're a
Mhm.
student and then you're a resident. So how has residency been different from your expectations?
Yeah, I think maybe this is going to be exposing myself a little bit, but one of my concerns when I was looking at all the programs I was looking at is I had a really easy call week when I was a student at Ascension St. Vincent.
Hmm.
I was with a super experienced second year at the end of her second year, and the list was really low, and she just handled everything like a boss. And she sent me home at like 11 o'clock every single morning. And I thought that that was what call at Ascension St. Vincent was going to be like. And I remember having a very honest conversation with Dr. Dakir of me being like, I don't know, it kind of seems like this is a country club program. And I look back on that now and I was so wrong.
Yeah.
I think you get a taste of what residency is going to look like when you're a student and when you're a student at whatever program you're visiting, you're externing at. But you don't really know. It's just like when people give you hypotheticals and they're like, well, if you were in this situation, what would you do? You don't
Hmm.
really know until you're in it.
Sure.
And I think Ascension does a really beautiful balance of we have a lot of autonomy. So we make a lot of our own schedule. I could have had this afternoon completely off if I wanted to because I was done with surgeries and clinic was covered. But I chose to go to ortho clinic because it was a cool opportunity and my chief said, go for it. It'll be great for the entire program. And my other co-residents are also welcome to go now as well. So I think that you go to the program that's the best fit for you, and it's so annoying when people say that to you where you're like, no, like I know what I want. You end up at what's best for you. And I truly
Mhm.
think that being at the type of program that I'm at, I'm surrounded by highly motivated people. Clinic doesn't go uncovered, cases don't go uncovered. We all make sure that our job is done and we take care of things, and I think that that's a really great thing. So I think when we say country club, there are a lot of different meanings with that, but just because you're not swamped 24/7 taking call every single week for all 3 years doesn't make it a good or a bad program. I think it's what you make out of the program. And I am really happy to be at ASV. And I think Dr. Dahir is a great program director and he leads with a lot of silent leadership where he doesn't tell us exactly what we need to be doing, but it's just an expectation that we get it done.
Sure. It's going to go in waves too. You're going to have a super busy week. You're going to have a less busy week.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're on call, sometimes you're not. And so I think it's interesting how some people handle the time where you aren't as busy. Are
Mm-hmm.
you making the most of it? Or, not every, let's be honest. You're a go getter. You're kind of a, you know, someone who's making the most of the situation, but it's okay also to go home and put your feet up if you had a busy
Yeah.
week and rest and relax and all
Yeah.
that. So I think residency goes in a lot of different waves depending on
Mm-hmm.
rotation you're on, depending on if you're on call. You're gonna have good times, you're gonna have bad times, but it's all gonna kind of even out towards the end. So yeah, I think I told you before, I rotated through that program long ago, different director and all that stuff. And so I can kind of picture
Yeah.
me being a student physically in that hospital and doing my rotation there. So it's kind of interesting to think back on the rotations that you went on that you liked, and that
Yeah.
was one that I did like, and some rotations where I just did not like it one bit. I didn't get along with the faculty attendings or the residents, or I didn't like the city or the hospital or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough. That makes for a tough month, I
It
think,
does.
because it's hard to stay motivated. It's hard to put on your happy face. It's hard to show up early, stay late, be a team player when you know
Mm-hmm.
this is not somewhere I'm going to end up. But I think it's in your best interest to still do that because of such a small profession and people talk and know each other. It
100%.
doesn't make any sense to burn any bridges. Not that anyone's doing that on purpose, but there's a lot of variability in fourth year. And I
Yeah.
think it's hard to plan the geography, like you
It
said.
is. It's so I had it planned out and it just didn't work out. I will
Yeah.
say, I think your last point is so, so important because there was a rotation that I thought in my heart, I was like, this is going to be my number one program. Like,
Mhm.
I can just feel it in here. And I went there and I didn't love it. I just didn't really like it. The vibes were not right. And I had kind of a miserable month when I was there. The weather was horrendous.
Now,
I
what program was that?
Yeah. But it was just one of those months that just it didn't work out. And I told myself every single day, like, you will be showing up as if you're ranking this program number one. You will be
Yeah.
showing up and you will get everything you can. Because just because you're not happy at that program, one, doesn't mean you can't learn.
Hmm.
And two, doesn't mean someone from that program can't talk to a program you really liked. I've
Yeah.
had friends from other programs text me about students who rotated with me and vice versa. Everybody's talking, and I really didn't like that program, and I ended up not ranking them because I just didn't want to be there. And some of the people that I rotated with there, like, they still talk to me and I still talk to them because I liked them. It just wasn't the right fit for me.
Well, you never know when the first year at that program you hate was co-students with the first year at the program that you do love,
Yeah.
and you burn any bridges or you don't put in your full effort. Well, they might
Right.
talk and be like, "Hey, I had this terrible student. Oh, what was
Yeah.
their name? Uh-oh, all of a sudden that you
Exactly.
burned your bridges at two different programs." So, not saying people do that, but I just think it's an interesting, and I wouldn't trade it for anything because I've
Right.
said it before. We're lucky in that we actually get to physically show up in
It makes
these
such a big
hospitals and meet these people. Can you imagine the way they do it in MD and DO where they get a few rotations, but
difference.
then their match at some hospital they never in a city they never been
Yeah.
to is like, oh, I guess I'm going to whatever
Hmm.
in a specialty that maybe I wanted, maybe I didn't. So we're lucky in that we can do it that way.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on residents doing research? Do you guys try to do research? Do you have time set aside for research? Are you kind of too busy for research, or how does that work there?
Dr. here definitely highly encourages research. We're required to do at least one research project. If I'm being honest, I think myself and all of my co-interns, we hit that within like the first 2 or 3 months of intern year.
Uh-huh.
And we're required to present at our IPMA, our Indiana Podiatric Medical Association meeting
Hmm.
every year.
Yeah.
But I think research is really, really important. I personally, I enjoy research, but I think the thing with research is you have to like it a little bit or it is miserable.
Hmm.
I have a co-resident who's absolutely brilliant and they are a stud in the OR. They do a really great job. And I know that they don't like research and I can tell like just not their vibe. And I
Yeah.
can't imagine if it's not a project that you're passionate about. I also have a co-resident who is a research guru. I mean, this guy lives to get research done. And
Mhm.
so he's a good person to have on a project because he wakes up to do, he might like research more than podiatry. I don't know. But I think research is really important. It's also a good way to network and get your name out there. I
Sure.
mean, just having a poster at one of these conferences and walking around and seeing what's new. I
Mhm.
also think that it's a good way to challenge yourself to think more critically. Reading the current research and kind of looking at it and being like, was this a good paper written? Did I just read the abstract? What does this paper actually mean? And what is it saying? And what does it add to the community? Are
Mhm.
all really important skills. And I mean, you see these people on social media who quote a study that had an N of 4, and then they're telling everyone to take whatever vitamin. It's really important for us as physicians to be able to kind of sift through that kind of stuff and see what's a good study and what's not. So I think research is important. I think doing research yourself really shows you how important it is to have those different things that we look for. But yes, so I participate in quite a few different projects. I'll have a poster at MacFast, and then I hopefully will have another one at APMA. So I think it's important.
I agree with you. And I think residency is a good time to do that
Yeah.
because you have multiple attendings with large patient populations. I found that when I get out on my own, it's number one, I don't really, life gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
I'm coaching my kids basketball. I've got kids this, kids that. I've got, well, this podcast. You get a lot going on. You're like, do you have time for research? Like, absolutely not. So,
Yeah.
residency is a great time to kind of double down and work on some research. And I did that in residency as well. But at some point, you know, I admire the people who get out of residency and continue to do research because you have to have a drive to be able to do that because it's a
Yeah.
lot of extra work. It's not like you're getting a paycheck. Maybe if you work in some sort of academic institution, maybe they're incentivizing you somehow, but
Hmm.
most for the most part, it's an unpaid extra thing. So being a resident and having that extra time to devote to research, I think is very helpful for the profession and generally pretty helpful for you too,
Yeah.
because by nature of doing research, you're going to read other research on that topic, educate yourself, and contribute to the overall greater good from a research standpoint.
Yeah. I think for me, one thing I do try to do that makes a big difference for me in the OR is I try to read a research paper on whatever surgery I'm going to do the next day. I try to read at least one paper on the night before
Mhm.
because I know I get a little nervous on the OR. And if I can ask a question to the attending based off that paper that I read, it just shows that one, I came prepared, and two, like I want to engage and I want to learn. And it's kind of building this basis of like, I want to do surgery and I want to do a good job. So I should know what's out there. And I should be reading and I should be collaborating with my attendings because they're my teachers. And some attendings are really into that and they love and they know that I do this. And other attendings are like, not super about it. But I think residency is a good balance of all of it.
You're gonna make them feel bad though, because you're gonna be like, "Oh, you know the article about this," and they're gonna be like, "Nope,
I
I
would never
don't.
do that.
I don't know what you're talking about." Yeah, don't ask me about any research. I try to read. We started the Gatekeepers Journal Club.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of growing. So if anyone's interested in checking out the Gatekeepers Journal Club, we're trying to make that into kind of a nationwide journal club for every
Mhm.
student, resident, whoever across the entire country, and get some authors on there. So yeah, we're going worldwide and getting people from Australia,
Yeah.
MD foot and ankle orthos from Australia on there. So it's
And you get
growing.
free CME.
Free
Sounds like a
CME.
pretty
I
good
mean,
deal
you
to
can't
me.
turn that down. So free is the best kind of CME. So how's your sole purpose blog going?
It's good. I was just talking to Dr. Dikir about it, and the really nice thing about Soul Purpose is one that it gives me a voice in podiatry, and it's really nice because students ask me the same types of questions all of the time. So, like I said, I'm starting to work with these third year students who are on their first externships, and being able to be like, oh, you know what? I actually wrote an article on this. Like, let me just send it over to you. Like,
Uh-huh.
I've heard this question. I've heard it enough that I want everyone to have access to this. And so
Yeah.
that's been really special. Additionally, it's crazy. I'm going to hit my 1 year in a couple of weeks, and how much I've changed, my career has changed in the last year is absolutely insane. I mean, I don't think if you had told me a year ago I'm going to be sitting on the Pod Patrol podcast and getting to talk to you. I mean, it has been
Not that
such a
special.
fun
It's not that
networking
exciting.
opportunity. Very exciting. But Soul Purpose is great. I think one of the things that has been interesting with it is people will email me about the articles themselves. And I think
Mhm.
it has taught me the importance of different nuances on what I refer to myself as, what I write about, and like the type of people that I engage with. I mean, I have some articles that I'm like, oh, like this is going to be a really great one. And I don't get any really feedback on it. I'll have an
Mhm.
article that I'd be like, oh, it was all right. Like, I mean, I had a good time writing it, and I'll get a ton of emails about it or suggestions. I just wrote an article last week about how, as a resident, it has been really difficult for me to confidently call myself doctor and to enforce that my patients call me doctor. And I got a bunch of cool emails of suggestions of things that I can do, like making sure that my badge says doctor or physician, which it does.
Mhm.
And ways that I can really politely correct patients and be like, oh, it's actually Dr. Santiago, like it's not honey or sweetie or something like that. And so it's been a cool community to be a part of.
I think it's harder for females.
Yeah.
Me being married to a female physician, I could speak to it a little bit, but I think it's harder for females just to kind of be taken seriously. And I think it's more important to ensure that people understand that yes, I am a doctor. This is how
Yeah.
you can address me. I still get patients that call me Jeff, and I don't care, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different, I think, because
Mhm.
I mean, my wife still gets confused for a student. Like we're 10 years out of residency, and
She's got great
people
skin.
thinks she was in the OR one time with a student, and they were kind of milling about, and the patient wasn't in the room yet, and the circulator, and they were kind of off to the side, and the circulator was like, who's this Dr. Dikis? I don't know who they are. And she kind of stood up and she was like, hi. And they were like, oh my God, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I did not know that you were the attending. So I get
Oh,
that sometimes you
yeah.
deal with, people think you're too young to be a doctor. I don't get that anymore. I used to get that. I don't get that. Now
Yeah.
they believe it. They're like, yeah, you look like, yeah, gray hair. Yeah, you fit.
Yeah. No, I've found a lot of funny comebacks. I mean, I'll usually tell them like, "Oh, I thought I needed to get Botox." Like, I appreciate that. My last name Indiana. Some people really struggle with Santiago. I got Sanchez a couple times last week.
It's not
But
even
it
close.
always comes from like a really nice place of like people genuinely, or I'll get Dr. San Diego a lot. But if they call me
That's not
doctor,
close either.
I don't really mind.
Yeah. Isn't it the capital of Chile?
It is the capital of Chile, and I
I
usually
mean,
say that, but people don't know the capital of Chile, and then it makes it worse.
they're like, what's going on? Chili, what, like chili cheese dog? Like, no, not chili cheese dog.
No,
What's going on?
it's a funny thing that I don't really mind, so it's no big deal.
I say Dikis rhymes with ficus, and they're like, then it
That's a good
causes confusion because they're like, what's a ficus? What's going? I'm like, all right, never mind. If you don't know what a ficus is, then you got to look that up. But yeah, people get more confused with my last name
Yeah.
too. So,
Last names are tough.
well, yeah, yours is a little easier than, at least yours is the name of something.
Yeah. Yeah, the capital of Chile, or I'll be like, it's exactly like how it's spelled, and I'll write it on their board so they know who I am.
It's not that hard. So you have taken over and you are the writer. I don't know what to call it. You do the Pod Patrol newsletter.
Yeah, I do.
So if anyone's listening and you're not a subscriber to the Pod Patrol newsletter, pause it,
Mm-hmm.
go to, what is it? I should know. All right. So for anyone not subscribed to the newsletter, you can go to podpatrol.kit.com. Podpatrol.kit.com. Why should people subscribe to the newsletter? What do we got going on over there?
Well, we have lots of good things going on with the newsletter. First of all, you'll be getting an email from me every single week, which I can tell you is a blessing. On top of that, we will have
Can't
quiz
beat that.
questions. So, with the quiz questions, I have them so they kind of build in difficulty depending on what year of school you're in or what you're interested in. So, the first question is usually going to be like a good anatomy review, something that you should really know in your preclinical. And then I'll have some clinical stuff, things that our third and fourth year students should really, really know. And then our last question is usually going to be something more for the residents or for really advanced students who feel ready to go about surgery. So these are just going to be good little brain teasers to get your mind moving. Another nice thing about the weekly newsletter is that it's going to be coming out on Sundays. So it'll be like as you're prepping for your week, you can kind of get your brain moving, ready for clinic on Monday or surgery on Monday. You can go through these quiz questions. We're also going to have journal articles, so you can have what's new in research. So if you're not into research, don't worry, I am, and I'll find some good articles for you to have a quick summary of, as well as the citation. So if you want to look it up. And then additionally, we'll have our Pod Patrol merch. We also will have our newest Pod Patrol guests that are upcoming. So you can get a little bit of a brief bio on them. And then I'll have the link to Sole Purpose at the end if you're interested in reading anything that I've written.
Awesome. So that's been growing. We've gotten some really good feedback about the newsletter. So hopefully people are able to check that out and sign up for that. Speaking of resources for students and residents to learn, what do you think are some of the best resources aside from Pod Patrol? Best resources for people to learn and educate themselves? Because some people aren't the type to just like start reading journal articles. Do you
Yeah.
find any resources that are specifically helpful for students or residents that want to kind of broaden their horizons?
Yeah, when I was a third year student, I religiously read Watkins. So, Watkins Journal of Foot and Ankle Surgery. I also used Crozier, so the Crozier manual that every third year student should use. So, what I did is when I was in third year, I went through the Crozier manual and I made flashcards from the Crozier manual. So, I kind of had those down as I rolled into fourth year. For preparing for surgeries, I used Glamries. And then I also would watch videos on ViewMedi as well as just YouTube. If you YouTube most podiatry surgeries, you can see it on YouTube and you can watch it the night before. Another thing that I did to prep when I was in third and fourth year is I would write a fake op note the night before with all the steps of the surgery to one, get me in the habit for when I was a resident and I knew I would have to dictate, and two, to kind of help get my in the mindset of what each step of the surgery would be, so that way I could be prepared. So that was another way that I like to go about surgery. And I would use McLamry and Man, it's another foot and ankle textbook.
Coughlin and Man.
Coughlin and
Coughlin
Man.
and
Yep.
Man. And Chang's. Gotta shout out Chang. Dr. Chang's going to be an upcoming guest on the podcast. So we got to
Very nice.
shout out Dr.
Foot by
Chang.
Flowers as well. Foot by Flowers. Aaron Flowers is a Western U grad. So
Awesome. Yeah, those are all great resources for people. And, you know, some of them are more in depth than others. Like, no, should you have read McGlamry's all the way once? once through from beginning to end? Probably once, yes, just so you have all of the information that's potentially out there. But are you going to do that? No, I've never done that. So
No, I'm a bad resident. I haven't done
there are
that.
other resources that are a little bit quick hitter. Yeah. There were some programs that would do like a chapter of McGlamry's and they would go
I
through
went
a
to those
chapter per
programs.
week or something. Like, it's a little intense for me. I need like I need the Cliff's notes.
Yeah. So if they want the Cliff Notes, that's why I wrote the Landmark series. It has summaries of the landmark articles of podiatry that I genuinely used when I was on rotations. And then it has the link to the PDF of the article itself if you want something more in depth.
Absolutely. I heard you on Dean's Chat. That was a great episode over on Dean's Chat. So if anyone didn't hear you over on Dean's Chat, I'd like to shout out, throw Dr. Jensen a little shout out. He does a great job over there, but I thought you guys did a great job representing your program over on Dean's Chat.
Yeah, Dean's Chat was a really great experience, and I was privileged to have one of my co-residents on with me. I'm really excited for him to be a guest on here as well.
Absolutely. A couple things. We'll do some quick hitter questions on your way out. So what's the hardest part of residency?
Being in an unfamiliar place. So going to a new surgery center with a new attending and not knowing what their expectations are.
Mm-hmm. That is difficult. What's the best part of residency?
My co-residents.
Good. It makes for a much better experience when you have good co-residents that you get along with, and you can't always pick your co-residents. In fact, unless you're a senior resident, you don't get much say at all in picking, your co-residents. So having good co-residents is very, very makes it much more enjoyable. When is the best time, do you think, for someone in residency to start looking for jobs?
Ooh, you're saying this to a very anxious first year that is convinced that she should already be looking for jobs.
No, you shouldn't, because you'll apply for jobs and they'll be like, we're looking for someone now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not ready now.
From what I've been told is the very best time is like the second half of the first half. So I guess the second quarter of your third year of residency is the best time to start looking. I'll tell you when I get there.
Yeah. I just didn't know if you'd had a senior residents that are kind of in that process. And
yeah,
I honestly didn't get a job until like May of my third year.
Okay.
And so I was a little bit picky and I ended up with a good job in an orthopedic clinic. But there were some where I started too early and they were like, when are you available? And I was like, July of a year and a half from now. And they're like, no, what? No, we need someone now. And you're like, oh, well, are you sure? Because I'll be ready. So it's hard.
I've had a couple of those awkward conversations where I'm like, well, if you're going to hire someone, I'll be ready in like 2.5 years.
Right. Just
like,
wait.
We're not going to hire
wait for me. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think this has been fantastic. I think this is great to touch base with everyone. Everyone check out Soul Purpose. How would they get access to Soul Purpose? They can Google it, or on the Present Podiatry website. Can you sign up for your
You can. So you can
newsletter
sign up
there?
On Present. It's podiatry.com. And then Soul Purpose comes out every Friday. So it's published on the website sometime midday. And then if you sign up for the emails, you'll get it at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I also post it on my Instagram. So at Sav Loves to Run.
Awesome. Check her out there. Sign up for the Pod Patrol newsletter run by Savannah as well. Thank you for hopping on tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of Paw Patrol with your host, Dr. Jeff Dikis. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Disclaimer. Opinions expressed are those of the content creators and do not represent any employer or entity. The information shared is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice or used in any legal capacity, including establishing standards of care. All efforts have been made to comply with HIPAA regulations. No guarantees are made regarding the accuracy of statements or opinions provided. Interaction with the podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please enjoy this podcast responsibly.